Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very pleased to welcome you to this session on smarter energy solutions. My name is Robert Lane. I'm a lawyer in private practice advising in the energy industry, and I've indeed been doing that for 25 years. But I also chair the government's UK Power Sector Advisory Group, which advises government on imports and exports in relation to the power industry. And power is a topic very close to my heart, having spent most of my working life doing it. And I'm very pleased that we're able to have a session today on one of those very important elements. We've heard earlier about generation. We've heard earlier about the ways in which to encourage new forms of generation. What we're going to do in this session is to look a little bit also about how we transport and how we use energy, because that itself is very important if we're to meet the various targets and just to be good citizens of planet Earth. And I'm very pleased today that I've got a very, very good panel of speakers who are going to cover an entire spectrum of those issues. And we will range from an overview of the issues you need to bear in mind in terms of networks and usage, through to some heavy engineering type networks in terms of distribution, through then to some of the IT solutions that are used at the wholesale level, and then finally on some of those IT solutions which people like you and me can use in our own homes in order to try and improve our energy usage. So it's a very important part of the overall mix and a very important part of today. I'm going to let each of my panelists broadly introduce themselves, but I'm just going to give a very brief overview now. Simon Harrison, who is Head of Energy at Mott, MacDonald, one of the big preeminent energy engineering firms, will be speaking. Basil Scarsella, who is CEO of UK Power Networks, the people who have the distribution network here in London in the southeast and who have kept the lights on at the Olympics. Nigel Spooner, who is Director of Portfolio and Operations at global utilities Logica, who's going to talk about some of that wholesale type IT solutions. And Mary Turner, who is the CEO of Alertme, who's one of the very important players on that consumer level of IT. That is the batting order we're doing. The printed document actually has a slightly different batting order, but the one that is electronically loaded has the correct batting order. And indeed, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Simon, who's going to start us off. What we're going to do is have hopefully some relatively brief presentations, some general points made by our panelists, and then what I'd be very keen on is then having a good discussion with us all, joining in with some ideas, both here from the UK but also from overseas, in terms of some of the opportunities and some of the issues we need to bear in mind. But can you join me in welcoming first Simon Harrison?
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Transforming the power system. I think it was Nick Clegg earlier this morning who said that we're on the cusp of very, very major changes in the way that we operate our electricity system in the UK and around the world. And the UK has a great tradition of pioneering and innovating change in electricity, perhaps one of the more recent examples being the whole transfer to the private sector. And firms such as mine have become adept at working with our clients and friends around the world to take some of that learning and look at the very different contexts of different countries and work out how to bring benefit and value from that. So what is this change? We're moving to a new place. We've had an industry which, in the sense of how it works, has not changed enormously for a very long time. But given decarbonisation, we're moving into a period where more or less everything that was a fixed is now becoming a variable. Generation is becoming a lot less flexible and controllable. We're moving from a world of relatively flexible, thermally dominated generation to relatively inflexible, nuclear and emissions abated generation and relatively uncontrollable renewable generation. Potentially, there is a transfer of many forms of demand to electricity. So, for example, in the UK, heating and much of transportation. The opportunity, which we'll hear about later, for control of demand and participation of demand in the overall supply and demand balance is becoming real. Electricity networks have to become a lot smarter to make all that work. And there's a big culture change needed. The players in the industry have to move from being focused all around delivery to focus both around delivery and around innovation at scale into legacy asset portfolios. And there's a lot going on in the UK from government and from the industry to enable and deliver that. And I'll just give you a couple of examples. Firstly, if we look at generation flexibility, on the left, we've got today's UK portfolio, different technologies, different levels of flexibility, and in the rightmost of those three columns, how important they are in the UK at the moment. So we have a system at the moment dominated by gas and coal, both of which are flexible, and inflexible nuclear. Renewables, as yet, relatively small contribution. Moving to 2030, and most of the scenarios that are projected for 2030 show a system that is a mixture of carbon capture and storage on thermal plant, nuclear, an awful lot of wind, a fair bit of biomass, and potentially contributions from interconnections into the rest of Europe. Very different picture in terms of flexibility, much less flexible plants, and new technology whose operational characteristics we really don't understand fully at the moment because it's new and emerging. So some real challenges there on how to work with a much less flexible generation portfolio, and big opportunities around linking that to flexibility on the demand side of electricity. Another example, electric vehicles, and I've deliberately taken this to an extreme so you can just get a shock. The real picture won't be as extreme as this one. But let's say, hypothetically, we took all the 32 million cars that currently exist in the UK, we threw those away, and we replaced those with electric vehicles, and then we plugged them all in to charge at once. Roughly what would happen is you get an 80 gigawatt new demand on the system. And by the way, the current maximum demand for electricity in the UK is about 60 gigawatts, and we have about 75 gigawatts of generation. Okay, so just to give you a feel for scale, in this pretty extreme case, you electrified every vehicle and plugged them all in together, you more than double electricity demand. It's a formidable statistic. It won't be as bad as that, but it's big. If you then take that down to street level, and let's think of a street of 10 houses at the moment. We've got an average 1 kilowatt or so demand in each house, so the street demand is 10 kilowatts. And let's say that half of those houses buy electric vehicles, and of course electric vehicles could be fashion items, and so if you buy one, your neighbour might want one too, so you could see potentially a proliferation. So let's say 5 people buy vehicles and all get home from work at 6 o'clock and plug them in, at close to peak demand anyway. You're then suddenly putting a factor of 4 extra demand on your street's electrical distribution system. If you don't control this, you'll break it. So you've got some real challenges and technical issues in dealing with that. So the enabler for all of that, for allowing supply and demand to be properly balanced at a macro level and managing the situations at a micro level locally, are smart grids. And I must just here say that when I was looking at this diagram, I was unable to find the source of it. So if it's somebody in this room or worldwide on video, I do beg your indulgence because I've pinched it from you and it's your property. But the idea of a smart grid is that you have effectively mega data flows around the whole system, and smart grids are a slight misnomer. It's actually all about data, and Nigel will talk about data in a minute, which allow you to bring demand, say at the domestic level or elsewhere, and match it with available generation to deal with storage, potentially to integrate across other energy vectors, so potentially you can store surplus electricity as heat, for example. It's also to allow much more intensive use of the network asset. So if you use the smart grid to control when your vehicles are being charged, you can potentially avoid digging up your street and putting an awful lot more distribution system in it, because you can manage the charging of those vehicles over time. You then need all the backup tariff incentives and everything else to say to you as a vehicle-owning customer that it's actually worth my while deciding to charge overnight rather than deciding to charge immediately. So there's a big complexity around all that, which the smart grid starts to open up. The other thing it does is it offers major integration opportunity across energy vectors and across infrastructure. It opens up transport and thinking more about integrating transport, and in particular, I think it opens up heat and the opportunities, for example, in long-term interseasonal heat storage and other integration of heat within an overall holistic energy system. And all this thinking at the moment is going on in the UK. And there's a whole lot of innovation drivers come from government and the industry, which are really important to this and which I think will be a model for the implementation of energy transformation in, shall we say, legacy energy systems worldwide. The Low Carbon Network Fund is £500 million worth of application investment to prove concepts in electricity distribution. There are huge changes to network regulation. This thing called RIIO is all about rewarding distribution companies for innovation. It's a complete change from the cost-based regulation we had before. The electricity market reform process has already been talked about and is all about opening up participation of generation, but also of demand in the energy market. And I'll draw particular attention to the Smart Grid Forum. It's less well publicised than the rest, but the smart grid is really complicated. We've all got different visions of it in the room, and we'll give our different perspectives. But making that a reality technically in the engineering sense is really very complicated. And also understanding how much it costs and what the benefits are and how it compares to alternatives is new work that is just now emerging from there. So, to finish with some challenges, I've talked a bit about some of the engineering ones, but there's a big stakeholder integration challenge. Lots of people who previously worked in different silos now have to work together, and there's a list of some of them there. And that's a big issue that the UK is grappling with, and I think grappling with ahead of many other people. Managing the allocation of value and risk is important because at the moment the investment is tending to be put in by different people to those who might reap the benefits. And so that's an issue to be worked through. And very important, and Mary will talk about it later, is the customer as part of the system. If they think there's a privacy issue, if they think it's all just too much hassle, they're going to reject it. And the underlying plank of what we're trying to do in energy then starts to rot away. So bringing consumers in and the underlying behavioural work to really understand that and deliver solutions that bring them benefits is absolutely key. I hope that's given a suitable context for what's now to follow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. That's a good start of a great overview of some of the issues. And now I'm inviting Basil Scarsella from UK Power Networks. Thank you.
Morning all, and Simon, the world is changing. When I look at the medal table for the Olympic Games as an Aussie, and I see not only Great Britain, and well done by the way, way ahead of Australia, but importantly, New Zealand has got more gold medals than Australia. So the world is changing. And that was the first week of the swimming, so there you go. I'm the CEO of UK Power Networks, and I will take you through, there's a lot of information in your pack, and I'm going to go through that information very quickly. But if you like, we'll be around during the roundtable sessions this afternoon if you'd like to explore some of the information, the information that's in your pack in a little bit more detail. But basically, I'll take you through very quickly a profile of UK Power Networks. And as Robert has already said, we are responsible for supplying electricity to a population of about 20 million people, 8 million connections in London, the southeast and east of England, and I'm delighted, and I'm looking for some wood to touch, that the lights have stayed on for the Olympic Games thus far. We are part of the Cheung group, an Hong Kong-based group, and I'll give you some background on that. We'll go through as to why, what we've done as a group here in the UK and why we think the UK is a great place to invest in infrastructure. I've spent very little time on the performance of UK power networks over the last 18 months since we acquired the 3 networks from EDF Energy, and then a little bit looking to the future. And Simon, if we get 32 million electric vehicles, you won't be going anywhere, you'll be using bicycles because at this stage, the way the network is configured, we won't be able to recharge the vehicles, but we talk about that a little bit later. UK power networks, as I said earlier, consists of 3 networks: London, eastern and southeastern of England. And broadly speaking, when you look at those stats, it's fair to say there are 14 electricity distribution networks in the UK. We own 3, but importantly, we supply about 1/3 of the electricity demand in the UK, whether it's through customer numbers, whether it's volume of electricity, whether it's new connections. We broadly are responsible for supplying or distributing 1/3 of the UK electricity demand. We are part, as I said earlier, we are part of a global group, the Cheung Group. Our chairman, Mr. Lee Ka-shing, he's based in Hong Kong. Part of the Hutchison 1 Power Group. CKI is the Cheung Kong Infrastructure, which is, by its name, is the infrastructure arm of the group, and we invest worldwide. The group is in 54 countries with 260,000 employees and a market capitalisation of approximately 100 billion US based in the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. It accounts for about 20% of the Hang Seng Index in Hong Kong. So it is a significant group, and you can see the structure on your overhead. Importantly, UK Power Networks is owned 40% by Cheung Kong Infrastructure, 40% by Power Assets, or as it used to be known, Hong Kong Electric, and 20% by the Lee Ka-shing Foundation. The group, the UK Power Networks Holdings Limited Group, consists of the 3 networks that I talked to you about, plus an unregulated, the 3 networks are regulated by Ofgem here in the UK, and we also have an unregulated arm that supplies power. If the Olympic Games were not enough, we deliver power to the London Underground, the airports, and also HS1, which is the railway to the tunnel that goes across to France. So that keeps our guys awake during the last week, and for that matter, the next week. I talked about the fact that it's a global group that invests across the world. We started off in Hong Kong Electric back in '85, and it's grown very quickly over the last 12 years or so, with Australian investments, New Zealand investment in electricity distribution. And you can see from 2004 the growth in the UK. Started off with Cambridge Water, a very small water company, and of an investment of about £60 million. And you can see followed with Northern Gas, UK Power Networks in 2010, Northumbrian Water, and I'm happy to say that while the Olympic Games have gone on, we've actually managed to sign up one other major deal. We've acquired Wales and the West Utilities, which is the gas distribution network in obviously Wales and the West. That's not on there, but it will be next time you see that chart. Why we invest in the UK? Importantly, it's a stable political environment, and I think if you need any more evidence that it's a stable political environment, I think that, and we've heard a little bit about it this morning, look at the way the UK government has stayed consistent in the energy policy and specifically in their need to invest in nuclear energy. While other countries, whether it be Germany, whether it be Italy, whether it be France, their energy policy, I think it's fair, at best, is unclear. And when it comes to nuclear policy, I think it's fair to say it's a shambles. In the UK, it's been very, very consistent and bipartisan support for nuclear power. I think someone said 80% of the politicians actually support the investment in nuclear power. I'm not sure when was the last time we saw an issue being supported by 80% of the politicians. So we like the political stability, we like the economic climate, although I think it's fair to say the economic climate over the last 3 or 4 years, we need growth. And I think all of us are working very hard to make sure that the economy here in the UK is turned around. Importantly, we are a regulated business, UK Power Networks, and we have a transparent and predictable regulatory regime with Ofgem. Simon very quickly mentioned Ofgem's making available £500 million for innovation, in effect, at the last reset. And credit to them, because that's forced organisations such as ours in the distribution network, our distribution business, to actually invest in innovation, both through the fund and also through our own financial resources. They've also embarked in a radically changing regime, call it RIO, which stands for Revenue Equals Incentive, Innovation and Outputs, which is an output-driven regulatory system rather than the traditional cutting costs. And I think that's generated incentives for distribution networks to actually be innovative and invest. And invest we must if we have any hope of responding or, in fact, being proactive to the changes that are taking place, as Simon mentioned. The market is large, and importantly, the capital markets, while it's been difficult across the world to actually raise debt, here in the UK, the capital markets have been pretty well open for over the last 4 or 5 years when other markets have struggled. I'm going to go through this very quickly. That'll give you an idea how our performance in distributing electricity in the 3 networks we've talked about has improved. We started off not in a good place back 2 years ago, but we've made significant improvement simply by adding focus to the organisation and actually just concentrating on the back to basic business of distributing electricity and focusing on customer service, costs, innovation, and making sure that the employees are fully engaged. You can see what we focus on. As I said, lost time injuries, safety. We focus on customers. We focus on costs. You can see customer complaints dropping by some 92% over a period of 18 months. At the same time, we've been focusing, obviously, on delivering for the Olympic Games. We distribute electricity to 29 of the 34 venues that have been used to deliver the 2012 Olympic Games. The other 5 venues are the football venues, which are obviously outside London and in the southeast. Without preempting faith, we have so far so good, and we have some 400 people working 24/7 to make sure that the delivery of electricity during the games is what is expected. But while we've been focusing on addressing the basic issues of the business and also on the Olympic Games, we're also looking to the future. Simon has has given the extreme example. This is what we believe is a more realistic example of what do we expect the changes to take place by 2030, and we look at the low carbon technology that we expect to come on the market that would have an impact on distribution networks. PVs installations, we expect to have across our networks by 2030, 800,000 PV installations. Onshore wind generation, which will impact on our networks, 1,100 megawatts. 1.1 million heat pumps, and keep in mind we supply electricity to 8 million connections, and there's only 1.1 million motor vehicles, even though we supply electricity to 20 million people, Simon. So we're not expecting for everybody to actually have electric vehicles. So these are our expectations of what are realistic assumptions, and therefore, as an electricity distributor, how are we going to respond to that? Because I think it's unacceptable to assume that all of those technologies will come on board and we'll simply have more copper in the ground, adding costs to the distribution network. So how are we going to respond to be able to minimise the cost, but at the same time be proactive in terms of responding to those technology? In a nutshell, anyone that knows anything about this electricity distribution, I think will agree with me when I say that in the past we've been passive. If the demand is there, we will deliver the capacity in the electricity distribution to be able to supply electricity. Given the changes that are taking place, I think it's imperative that we actually are active in managing the networks, and therefore we are implementing with technologies that will help us manage the demand that we expect is going to grow. Electric vehicles, Simon mentioned, if everybody recharges their vehicles at 5 o'clock when they get home, clearly that's going to create a problem. And in order to generate, to produce that sort of capacity for everybody to recharge the motor vehicles, it's simply unaffordable. Therefore, we're looking at technologies and testing technologies through smart meters that are going to be rolled out. So how are we going to encourage customers to actually recharge their vehicles off-peak? Basically, while we focus on the past, and we need to ensure that the 8 million customers that we deliver electricity to receive the service we need at an affordable price, the focus clearly is for the future. And as I said earlier, this is a quick snapshot of some of the things we've done and some of the things we're going to do. And as I said earlier, I'd be happy to go through some of the information that you've got in more detail at the roundtable sessions this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Basil. That was a very helpful overview of some of the issues from the wider distribution network. And as I mentioned earlier on, the other element which is very important in this overall mix of requirements is the IT. So I'm very pleased to ask Nigel Spooner to come and tell us from a Logica perspective what tricks are up their sleeves.
There we go. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As Robert has said, my name is Nigel Spooner, and I lead the global utilities sector for Logica. This is an international business and technology service company. We employ about 41,000 people around the world. We provide business consulting, we provide systems integration, and we provide outsourcing to clients around the world, including many of Europe's largest businesses.
Now, earlier Sam Laidlaw mentioned the energy trilemma, that trilemma of coordinating security, affordability, and sustainability. And I submit that information technology is at least one of the keys to resolving the trilemma. In the utilities sector, Logica is deeply involved, providing the capability, for instance, to run many of the world's energy markets, as well as operating, in fact, one of the world's largest intercontinental wind farm portfolios. Now, our previous speakers have introduced the exciting changes that are taking place in the world of energy production and distribution. And we've seen how one very eminent participant in the UK market is investing and innovating in the opportunities presented by these changes. My task, therefore, is to show briefly how information technology, as both a driver and an enabler, is fundamental to the achievement of business benefit in this changing world. Now, here's the challenge. So on the left, we've got a traditional electricity meter. I'm sure you will recognize it. It is electromechanical. It has an interesting spinning disc going round. And by the way, you can stop it working by encouraging ants to build a nest in it. And when the nest gets up to the level of the disc, it stops going round. And as many people in many parts of the world have found out, that is a good way to get free electricity. This meter gets read at most once a month, usually via a manual process. The amount of data this produces is tiny, just a few kilobytes for the techies amongst you per consumer. And this is fine for producing simple bills, but not much else. On the right is a new smart meter. Electronic, no good for ants, they don't like them at all, and it's differentiated by having two-way communications capability, which allows it to provide virtually real-time information on consumption. Instead of being manually read once a month, or even once a quarter, or even sometimes, in the UK, once a year, if you're lucky, it can provide a reading every 15 minutes or less. This data can be used to provide a more complex range of tariffs, enabling suppliers to give a personalized approach to their customers. It also allows these customers to manage their consumption on the basis of knowing exactly what they're using on a daily or even hourly basis. And we'll hear a bit more about that a bit later on. But the impact, of course, of this capability is that the volumes of data which suppliers have to capture, check, store, and use will grow by a factor of several thousand. And that's really what's behind the difference in size between those little data drums there. However, the implications of a major implementation of smart meters on suppliers is not just limited to this massive increase in data volumes. The regulatory requirements will inevitably develop in line with the smart experience, and market repercussions will result in the need to modify the ways in which data is collected, handled, distributed, and exploited. As a result, the ICT systems which need to be modified and even implemented to handle these new requirements will inevitably be both expensive and subject to ongoing change. It's for this reason that Logica has introduced, over the past few years, a smart data service. This allows market participants to introduce smart meters for their customers without having to make a major capital investment on modifying or replacing parts of their IT systems. The service allows suppliers to explore the new business opportunities presented by smart metering in a way which reduces both the costs and the risks involved in doing so. As you can see from the logos on the side of the slide, an increasing number of major organisations are taking advantage of this opportunity. But smart meter data, of course, is not only relevant to the consumer and supplier. It provides significantly more information to the operators of the distribution networks, providing insight on network loads beyond the limits of traditional SCADA systems, which traditionally stop at the final substation. Now, Lowcarbon London is a project led by UK Power Networks, involving a wide range of companies contributing specialist expertise to its various areas. It's a £30 million programme, largely funded through our industry regulator Ofgem's Low Carbon Network Fund, dedicated to help develop smart electricity networks in Britain. London, I'm proud to say as a Londoner, is at the heart of this initiative. And between January 2011 and June 2014, we're running a number of trials in new technologies and new approaches to smarter energy use in order to understand how our electricity networks will need to adapt to the low-carbon future. The ambition is straightforward: to prepare London's electricity network to deliver sustainable green electricity to power a low-carbon city. This ambition directly drives the project's objective of understanding the combination of technologies, operational processes, and commercial arrangements that are required to fulfill it. Over the next few years, as we've already seen, many changes are expected. Electricity sources will become more varied. A significant growth in electric car use is expected. Very significant, if we believe Simon Harris. And every home in Britain is due to have a smart meter installed. Electricity network operators such as UK Power Networks must respond innovatively to these changes. And technologies such as distributed generation, heat pumps, demand-side management, and wind twinning are key to that response. Inevitably, information technology has a major role to play in enabling the success of low-carbon London. That success is dependent on integrating information from a wide range of sources in order to provide a holistic view of the capital's energy and carbon expenditure. Logica's role includes the provision of the smart meter head-end system via the smart data service that I mentioned earlier, to capture all the smart meter data, as well as providing carbon accounting, consultancy, and experienced project management expertise. So I'd like to close by mentioning a rather lesser-known aspect of Logica's capabilities, and that is as a publisher. We've had considerable success in writing short books to explain in simple terms how various aspects of our industry actually work. Here are two examples: Smart Grids for Dummies and Smart Metering for Dummies. These are available for free download from our website, but I have some hard copies available, and I'd be delighted to give them away in the one-on-one sessions this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for that, Nigel. That was a very interesting overview of how, at that wholesale level, the integration, which is going to be so important to make this all works. I'd now like to invite Mary Turner from Alertme to come and tell us, from her perspective, her company's perspective, how it fits in with the consumer actually enjoying the benefits of this smarter network.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Nigel, Simon, and Basil, for sharing your thoughts about the huge investment that's going into this transformation, and also the initiatives that are taking place in the energy sector. I'm Mary Turner, I'm CEO of Alertme, and very briefly, what we provide is cloud services for consumers to remotely manage their home and intelligently automate to make not only the customer smarter, but actually the homes smarter. So what I'm actually going to focus on is actually how customers and customer engagement and innovation in the customer arena can actually optimize the value of investment that we are taking or making in the energy sector, and how it can actually lead to further innovation to what I call spur on the next wave of the digital economy. Personally, I spent the last 20 years of my career in the internet space, and I was fortunate enough to participate not only in the transformation of that industry, but also experience the enormous growth in that sector. And I absolutely believe we are actually at the cusp of the next wave in this digital economy. Transformation is not new. It's not a new phenomenon. We've actually seen it in mobile, in telecommunications, in the internet space, in publishing, in retail, in broadband, digital TV. That's not new. So what is actually interesting for me is to actually distill some of the common themes and the high-level data points that we can actually draw to guide us through the next transformation, which is a transformation in the energy sector. For me, the key learning, the real magic happens when we effectively combine infrastructural investment and customer innovation and engagement. That's really when the magic happens. Just to take a couple of examples, look at the mobile industry. It took 10 years for the UK to achieve 7% penetration or adoption of mobile services from the very first call that was made on the Vodafone network in 1985 to 1995. Adoption, 7%. There were, of course, network constraints. There were issues and limitations on features, but mainly it was about the affordability of the services for consumers, because what mobile services was seen as was primarily a tool for businesses and businessmen, and also a product for more affluent society. So it was only when the network actually moved from an analog network to a digital network, it opened the scope for mass scaling, and business and industry started to innovate in terms of consumer propositions by way of prepay, as an example, innovate on the handsets, making it more portable, more fashionable, more handbag size, as I call it, and also pump out huge campaigns to actually increase awareness of what mobile can do. It was only then that the market started to adopt, and the next 5 years saw adoption increase from 7% to 46% by 1999, and the rest really is history. We can also see the same happening in the space of fixed-line internet access. The first 8 years of dial-up services, less than 5% penetration. It was really for the tech-savvy and for the very high-end part of the market. And it was when FreeServe, in 1998, launched Pay-As-You-Go, that the market started to take off. But really, it went from 1 million customers to 2 million customers and contributed about 10 million of e-commerce revenues. But the true acceleration and adoption took place when we moved to digital, when broadband was launched. When broadband was launched and the market opened, it attracted huge amount of investment in the LLU program that enabled the market to truly innovate in huge amount of services off the back of that. Broadband became affordable. It became more than just an access product. And the routers were given away for free just to fuel the market. Broadband Britain very quickly saw the adoption of internet services rise from 1 million customers generating 10 million of e-commerce revenues to 17 million customers today, generating about 82 billion pounds of related revenues. 45 billion of that coming from just e-commerce. The other day I read a key statistics put out by A.T. Kearney in, I think it was February or March time. They estimated for every £1 of revenues generated through access actually delivered 5 extra pounds of revenue in other digital services. So the point I'm trying to make here is fundamentally that we have to look at this transformation, not just about energy. This is not just about optimizing the value of investment that we are putting in the energy sector. It's not just about customer engagement. There is a wider and more significant movement out there. This transformation is about changing the way we interact with our homes. If you look at today's generation, what I call the E generation, and they're not just youngsters, it's just the E generation, consumers are already connected to everything that matters to them. Their family, their friends, their shopping, travel, bank accounts, school, entertainment, say it, and they're connected, but not their homes. People are already living their lives on the go. They are time-starved, cash limited, and they want instant gratification. And that's what we need to embrace when we transform the energy sector, because it's not just about energy, it's about the whole home. My assertion really is the environment is ready. The catalysts are already in place, and we are really well placed to release a greater value by giving customers not only visibility of the energy that we use in the homes, but actually controls and intelligent automation, making our homes more comfortable, more efficient, and smarter. One of the key statistics, again, that I always refer to is a paper that was put out by Boston Consulting Group that estimated that only 60% of the business case for smart meters can be made through the operational efficiencies. The other 40% is consumer related. So it's very important that we truly embrace and engage the customers by providing them with usage information, giving them flexible pricing to choose from, and also easy to use tools that they can actually control and automate their usage and their homes. What Alertme does is we actually put the home in the cloud. That's the best way I can actually describe it. We put the customer's homes in the cloud, and with a single home gateway, we connect devices and appliances in the home and collate data from the home, whether it's from the smart meter, from the devices, from external data based on your location and address. We give visibility to the customers and intelligently automate the home. What we bring really is we bring customers and their homes closer together so we give them the convenience to manage their homes effectively, efficiently, without actually sacrificing comfort. If you actually look at the internet space, it's actually evolved over the last 2 decades. I remember 20 years ago launching CompuServe in the UK. It was about email, the humble old email. 20 years ago, it was primarily about communications, email, instant messaging, forums, billboards, and so on and so forth. Very technology savvy people for the technologists. But since then, the internet has embraced beyond communication to information, entertainment, e-commerce, social media, and I believe the next big wave is really the Internet of Things. In fact, Cisco at their summer summit actually predicted that by 2015, there will be 15 billion connected devices on this planet. That's twice the population of this planet. And that's just an incredible statistic. For me, smart really is bigger than just energy. It's about creating an environment for innovation way beyond energy management and savings. What I believe we are witnessing today is the beginning of what I call the creation of the e-home. But this really requires energy companies, device manufacturers, and technology companies like Alertme really coming together to provide a whole home solution that is not only affordable, but also coherent. Alertme's partnership with companies like British Gas in the United Kingdom, Ascent in Netherlands, and more recently, Lowe's in the United States, are very critical in demonstrating the value that we can actually bring to smart. And also, it is essential that we start to create that momentum. Of course, I see this. We are really in an emerging early stage market. But my view is this market is going to be absolutely significant. When it happens, it's going to be big and it's going to happen very, very fast. Last week, a research company put out a statistic, again, Strategy Analytics, put out a statistics that showed that by 2017, 5 million homes in the UK will be smart enabled. What I mean by that is it's not about smart meters, but the home will be smart enabled. And that alone will generate an extra £1 billion worth of digital revenues. So here I am, I'm very excited, but also quite anxious that we embrace and grasp really the next wave of innovation so that we can truly deliver value to consumers. Because there is so much talk about the smart grid, the smart meters, and so on and so forth. But really, the consumer does not understand what that's about. They have to taste and experience the true benefits, and that's what we're about. We want to convert that investment in the smart technology and bring it to the palm of the consumers and deliver real value. What that will do also is it will enable energy companies to meet their commitments and also realize returns far beyond the operational efficiencies that we are counting on. So in conclusion, what I would say really is we here today in Britain have a real opportunity, a true chance to create and lead the next digital market for the connected things, and really start the momentum to push and accelerate the next wave of the digital economy, way beyond the 85 billion that we are experiencing from the last wave of the digital economy. So thank you very much for your attention.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, for the contribution to that. And I just wonder, we've got a few minutes, just a few minutes, a minute or two. Is there any immediately pressing question that somebody would like to raise in the context of what the four speakers have said? The one thing which struck me was the integration word, and partly because I'm a lawyer, perhaps, it really struck me, of the rules and regulations that will need to make everybody work together. And I don't know, Simon, have you got any view as to how easy that's going to be to achieve?
I think it's going to be quite tough. It's not just about rules and regulations, but it's also about culture, mental attitude. Even in the electricity sector, those of you who are in it will know that the people who generate the stuff tend not to talk very well to the people who move it around. And that's, there's 100 years of that, which will need to be broken down. The engineers who do the power have a different language to the engineers who do the IT. That's got to be broken down as well, and there's a lot to do.
Basil, you were talking about Rio being a great innovator in terms of innovation. Do you think that giving an incentive through the regulator working in that way could be quite helpful in terms of encouraging that integration?
I think the changes in regulatory regime are going to help, but I'm with Mary. I think the customer would actually demand that companies, organisations such as ours, who I think, if we're honest with ourselves, have really ignored the customer in the past, would have no choice but engage with the customer, understand what the customer is expecting, and actually be proactive rather than traditionally we've been reactive to the extreme.
Yeah. Nigel, presumably part of it as well is just making sure that that infrastructure of your form of IT is there and able to give the right signals, because integration for all of us relies on the right signals going to the right places.
Yes, I mean, when I think back in the 25 years that I've been in the IT industry, we've moved from IT being the kind of preserve of people in white coats and a great big mystery to everyone, to it being everywhere. Everyone understands IT, at least insofar as sharing information is concerned. Companies are learning that rather more slowly than consumers, to be honest. But I think when the two come together, we will achieve what we need to achieve, which is a complete sharing of information.
And Mary, I think you gave a very powerful overview of the thing that if we as consumers actually want it, then it can be delivered. And companies such as yours and the experience from the internet revolution has meant that if the customer can be encouraged to realise what's there, and you were talking about some of the advertising and the campaigns, I think that's going to be quite important. Do you think that will help as well by working with, say, the network companies and others to achieve that?
Absolutely. I think part of the issue is because of the enormous amount of investment we're making on the networks and so on and so forth, really the focus seems to be about technology, IT, investments, efficiency, how electricity is distributed and so on and so forth. That's what appears in media, but ultimately that's not what interests customers. What is interesting to customers is it going to be easy for me? Have I got a choice? Is it going to be affordable? And is my life going to be more convenient and more comfortable? That's what they need to focus on. But the unfortunate thing is that because a lot of the money is going on what I call the plumbing of the system, that's what consumers are reading, and they're looking at these things and sort of saying, God, I don't want to engage with that. So really, when we start talking about the real benefits, as we did, through the sort of internet revolution, that's when we will see customers actually adopting, when they have that understanding.
No, tremendous. Question there.
smarter energy solutions?
Sorry, I'll just repeat that if anybody didn't hear. I was just curious to know where the UK sits in smarter solutions in the Olympic table, if you take it as a global sector, and obviously smarter would be a global industry. Which countries are at the top of the leaderboard and which countries are struggling and so on? It's just a point of interest.
Simon.
I think it's important to understand the difference between making smart a legacy infrastructure and doing it from a blank sheet of paper. If you put those two together, certainly I would say the Koreans, the Chinese are doing very well in terms of exemplar projects and cities and such like. Where the UK is bringing its thinking is to how to enable that on a legacy system. And I think there's a lot less of that going on. So we've got two medals tables, I think. We're not really in the one which is about building brand new cities and making them smart from the outset. We are in the one which is about creating enabled smart infrastructure out of legacy. And I think we're not doing badly there. Maybe we're not as high as third, but we're not bad.
Does any of the other panel want also to comment?
I tend to say that the UK is probably right at the top. From a regulatory perspective, we operate pretty much across the world, and the UK regulatory regime is the only one that's actually put some money up to support what there's lots of talk about smart grids, but Ofgem here in the UK, like I said earlier, has put up £500 million over 5 years for the 14 electricity distributors to actually tap on to invest in innovation. So I'd argue that the UK is right up there.
Okay. Question over there. If you could just say actually who you are as well.
Well, Mary, you were outlining the scale of the opportunity. Could you talk a little bit about where you have been deployed? What is the traction of your rollout? And what do you see as the barriers? You alluded to problems with the plumbing, but what is the nature of where you are and what are the barriers?
Currently, we are rolled out, obviously, we have a partnership with British Gas. They are very innovative in the smart area. So we are rolling out programs with British Gas. We've just launched in the stores in the United States with a home improvement company called Lowe's. That's just happened at the moment. So really from a challenge perspective, the first point is really making sure customers understand what smart is about, making homes smarter. Because a lot of the times, certainly in the United Kingdom, as soon as you mention smart, they think it's about smart metering. And that inevitably leads to more accurate and timely billing. And most consumers feel that's a hygiene factor. Surely that's something that we should be getting. So there is a lack of understanding, certainly in the United Kingdom, what smarter homes mean. But certainly the US is way ahead of, I think, the rest of the world, because smart homes and automated homes is top there. Retail companies like Lowe's are actually rolling out. So we'll see where the traction is coming from. And really what we need to do is what we did in the mobile industry and also in the broadband industry. We need to increase the awareness. We did the same with the digital switchover. There was a lot of government spend to increase awareness and educate the market. And I think that it's absolutely important because the technology, the plumbing, the services, they're there. Really now it's about pushing the true benefits to increase adoption.
All right, well, look, we should probably wrap there. There is, I should remind you, an opportunity this afternoon for further discussion on this topic. As the programme outlines, there are further breakout sessions after the lunch break. The one relating to this one, which will be back in this room, begins at 3:45 to 4:45, and the speakers or other representatives will be available just to answer more questions in detail. I think it's been a great topic to cover. I'm very glad that in the overall mix, it's something which is recognised as being important. It's not going to be an easy answer to get smarter energy here, but it is something where clearly a great deal of thought is being given. I think if that integration and customer focus can be followed, then we're very much on the right path. So I would give it a gold medal. Anyway, thank you very much, everybody, and thank you to the panel.